Alright YouTube, today we're looking at Land of the Goat, Witchcraft in the Pyrenees. This is the most recent offering from Three Hands Press. It is a shorter book, very similar to, similar in size anyway, to 13 Pathways of Occult Herbalism or Plants of the Devil, also by Three Hands Press. So, shouldn't take you too long to get through. And it is one that really piqued my interest, Land of the Goat, and getting into some of those stories and myths or facts in some cases of actual events and trials that are covered in the book. It has the table of contents, history of the primordial witch, the Pyrenean devil, Land of the Goat, the witching landscapes, Adjutant de Bruxes, which is essentially the Sabbat, and then lots of glossary, indexes, and references for the book, as we have come to expect. It also has a really nice map here if you are in the United States and maybe not super familiar with where this might have taken place. So I really appreciate the map being added. Of course, you can see France at the top there. So that mountain range there is where a lot of the information comes from. One thing I will say about the book is that it really gives you a lot of appreciation for some of the folklore and traditions that maybe aren't normally looked at. And this is a book that really shines light on the Pyrenees Mountains and what happened during the 1400s or so. It's broken up into the three main sections. Again, the history of the primordial witch, or the Bruxa, and goes into the land, and then some of the testimonials or accounts of trials, and then it switches over to going into depth about the feast and what happened at the Sabbat. Essentially, the Bruxa was believed to be an incorporeal being or force in the Pyrenees Mountains. And then from there, over time, thanks to the church and other ruling classes, the force was deemed to be evil and linked to those who made medicines and potions and folk remedies. And then, of course, it spiraled from there into fear of people who were accused to be associating with the Bruxa, or believed to be working with the devil. I did make a note here that in the book it does mention that in 1279 was the first legal prosecution was brought against a woman believed to have been in league with the devil. And again, really anybody who was practicing sorcery, maleficum, using poisons, or blaspheme against God or the cross would be punishable by death. And that was really what the people in this time were up against if somebody accused them of any of these practices. Again, kind of similar to what happened in the U.S., once people had a general fear, it just kind of went from there, and they would say anything to get people put on trial and, by the accuser's eyes, hopefully murdered. And they would claim that there was also infanticide, incest, and orgies in the literal sense that would take place, and that would, of course, stoke the fires to kill those who would be practicing. Of course, the artwork is absolutely stunning, always is. And then this is where later in the book here we start to get into some of the different types of landscapes. You have the mountains, the lakes, human-made locations that were in the Pyrenees. And this is where it gets into the actual Sabbat. I'm just using that for brevity, but the author basically mentions that he doesn't use Sabbat as much because it kind of has a negative connotation in some circles. or maybe a little too vague to convey what he's trying to explain from this book and the extensive research that he did. Some of the other animals or beings, I should say, that are associated, it talks about fairies, shapeshifters, and werewolves. There's a couple others. And then it also mentions types of animals that were associated, especially the toad, and how a toad skin bag would be used for some of these potions, whether they be poisons or remedies. And that information is said to be bestowed from the devil when those who would go to the actual sabbats. Going back briefly, I mentioned again in 1279, that was like the first legal prosecution that was mentioned, which, being here in the U.S., that was roughly 400 years before the trials in America, the witch trials. Actually, it might not even have been what you would consider the Salem witch trials, but just that was the first case in America of, someone motivated by the same groups, religion and people in power and so forth, being afraid to lose that power or control they had, because religion likes to control people. So anybody who is trying something different would certainly scare those people at the time, and to an extent what we're seeing today. There are a couple of instances here. If you've read, I think it was By Moonlight and Spirit Flight, also a Three Hands Press book, it talks about what flying to the Sabbat was. There's a little bit of that mentioned here as well. It talks about the ointments and salves that would have been used, and then it talks about what happened at the Sabbat. Once you transport yourself with your spirit double to the Sabbat, it would talk about the events that would take place, making the pact with the devil, feasting, the orgies, and so forth. At the end here, of course, we have a glossary and then an index towards the end here. Very well done, very much appreciated for referencing things you'd like to find later. So yeah, overall, definitely recommend it. This is, by no means a grimoire or anything like that, but it is another exceptionally well-researched and written book from Three Hands Press. And thanks for watching.